there. I think it's the time of year where I get to talk about the worst books I read, and I'm very excited to do this. I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that I don't add any more bad books for the rest of the year. But I thought I would do a little chaotic summary of the worst books I read this year, everything below 3 stars and DNFs. So if I scroll down to the bottom of my Storygraph page, because I like to use Storygraph to track my reads, and it gives you this really cool page. I'll put up a screenshot here of what it looks like on mobile, and I can scroll down to the bottom and look at my star spread. And so I'm gonna go and we're gonna start with 2.5s. I have read 10 books this year that I have rated 2.5. So I'm going to not give full synopses on all of these. I'm just going to go through them. And I think probably if you haven't gone through my worst, like my Thanks I Hate It or Reading So You Don't Have to series, you'll probably be surprised. This is probably the biggest surprising one. It's the According to My Goodreads wrap up that came in my email. This is the highest rated Goodreads book that I read this year. Last year, my least favorite book was also the highest rated book on Goodreads. And that was Fourth Wing. So what is it this year? It's The Will of the Many. I hated it. I have a full spoiler breakdown on why I hated it. I may pick up the second one just because of FOMO. And if I do, I'll do a full breakdown on it because from what I understand from this author's writing, his writing is just not for me. It felt very, the plot felt very juvenile. It felt very Gary Stu. I was not impressed. I was not impressed. Up in here also is Strange Folk, which was an arc I read by Ali Dyer. This was set in the Appalachian. This was magical realism. Appalachian Mountain Range. I should have finished that. I believe it was around the Kentucky area. I'm not sure exactly where it was set because it was just kind of general small Appalachian town. And it really felt like it could have been anywhere rural USA, just based on the way the town was described. The only thing that really gave away the area was maybe the words that people used to refer to each other. Grandma Mama was how the grandmother was referred to. And then people would casually stare off into the mountains. But given that I live near the Cascades and I grew up in a small town, people would also just randomly stare off towards the Cascade Mountain Range when they were thinking. We all stare at Mount Rainier when we're thinking. It's a standard thing that we do here. There was a lot of stuff about that one. I have a full breakdown of that one, I believe. If not, I have a very extensive review on Goodreads. Congo by Michael Crichton. I read that one with my brother, and we did the deepest dive on Congo that you never asked for. Yeah, we both really hated it. It was a 3 originally, and I've dropped it to a 2.5. There's so much wrong with it. I think we didn't really hate it. We were just incredibly disappointed by it. Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. I did do a full breakdown of this one too, because I wanted my time back after I read it. I was so disappointed. There was just so many weird behaviors from the main character, both the main female character and the main male character, and it was uncomfortable. I was not a fan. We also spent an inordinate amount of time in a brothel. Very odd. The Ministry of Time is a 2.5. I have a full breakdown of this one too. Let's keep real people in the history books, please. Let's not write fan fiction about real people. It makes me very uncomfortable. Obviously, this is a me thing. Reviews are subjective. Reviews are subjective. Despite what I have seen on threads recently, reviews are subjective. Persephone Station, this was a big disappointment. This was a sci-fi that was really gender inclusive and had this really creative, alien race, and the book just kind of fell flat. It was very odd that the author chose to say that when the main character would walk into a room, there were 2 men and 2 women and a non-binary person. As if you could just tell people's gender by looking at them, which is kind of antithetical to the point of being gender inclusive in a story. It was very odd. Lisa Jules, none of this is true. I also did a full breakdown of this one. I hated this one. I really hated the villainization of the grooming victim. I really hated that. And then A Princess of Mars, which is by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is a classic. This is the John Mars movie, and I watched the movie with my boyfriend and then was like, let me read the book. And I found it on Audible for free in their Plus category and decided to listen to it. It was only like 6 hours, but it was a chore. It was a chore. Very formative to the genre, and I really think it has value as a piece of history of the sci-fi genre, but as a piece of literature and my enjoyment, it sucked. I hated it. The most Gary Stew that could ever Gary Stew. I think I said John Mars is the name of the movie. John Carter is the name of the movie. I really want to start calling every Gary Stew a John Carter. Like, that's what I want to do from now on. So there were 2 graphic novels. I'll give them to you real quick. Chainsaw Man's number 7 just really let me down. I've been enjoying the series, but 7 was just kind of like, eh. American Vampire, which is Stephen King and Scott Snyder. It was misogynistic in a lot of like really terrible ways that I just really didn't enjoy. I really did not enjoy it. The art was great, but I really did not enjoy the story. Okay. I have one book in the 2.25 category. Let's see what it is, because I am about as knowledgeable about what it is as you are at this moment. This was a graphic novel as well. This was a manga. This is #DRCL, Midnight Children Volume 1. This is a Dracula retelling where it's a dark academia Dracula retelling, which sounded really cool, with all of the characters are in a boarding school. They're all from like different places. They have different roles in society, and our Lucy is trans, and it sounded so good. And it kind of sucked. It was really confusing. From reviews, it gets better as it goes on, but it didn't make me want to go on. So, struggling, because I liked the concept of it, but did not like the execution. Okay. I have 4 books that I gave 2 stars to. I have also done an in-depth review for why I hated this one, and that was Slewfoot. And I feel very weird about this because so many people love Slewfoot, and I keep seeing it on Instagram recently too, where everyone's like, again, like going crazy over Slewfoot. I didn't like it. I really couldn't tell who the main character was supposed to be. So many of the scenes were reliant upon how the men reacted to something that Abatha did. Abatha was not the main character in her own story. The men in the town were the main character in Abatha's story. Everything that we knew about Abatha, we knew it from the POV of the men in her life, even though she was the narrative POV. And it really bothered me how it was done. House of Hunger. I really wanted to like this one. This is sapphic, this is vampires, this is gothic, this is like control and manipulation, but I didn't like the way the characters were written. I didn't like their actions. The setting was stunning. It got 2 points just for the setting and the ambiance and like the vibes, but the characters were so weird in the way that they were written and the way that their arcs progressed, the way that they interacted with each other and then would flip that for no reason. I didn't like it. Among the Living by Tim Levin. This is a recent read. This was one of my most anticipated horrors of the year. It was climate horror. It was eco horror. It was boring as fuck. It was inspired by the zombie ant fungus, which is cool as hell. And it did not deliver. It was predictable and uninspired, I think, honestly. I really didn't like it. I was pretty upset by it. By the fact that I wasted the time with it. The interaction between the characters was such a letdown, and there's so many reviews that are talking about how like great these characters were and how they interacted with each other felt so real. And it makes me really, really think about how different people can interpret things and how differently people view things that they read or listen to, or how people view interactions between people and how that differs through your own lens. It's fascinating that so many people think this is like amazing characterization, and I was like, this characterization sucks. So it's really one of those things where it's like, take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I maybe am not like you, and I probably do view things through a very different lens than you do. The Deading. This was another disappointment. I'm not gonna lie. I requested an ARC of this one, an advanced reader copy, just because of the cover. And then it was eco horror. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. Climate change, eco horror, love it. The author of this is a journalist. I believe this is his first novel. And so I did give it a little bit of grace because it is his first novel, but it was rough. He made a point in the acknowledgments to acknowledge that Stephen Graham Jones helped him write a lot of scenes, and you could really see the scenes where Stephen Graham Jones had a hand in those scenes. And I thought they were real. Those scenes were good, and you could see it. You could see his signature in those scenes, which made it jarring, going from the ones that the author had clearly written himself, and then the ones that he had mentorship on, had clearly taken a lot of the mentorship on, because it was just this big switch in the tone of voice. This one, I believe I did a longer video on back in January, but it had a lot of big science info dumps, and I say this as a scientist who likes to read about science. There was big info dumps in here. And then there was also we kept jumping these different POVs. We had a, what do they call it? The chorus POV. So, in Hercules, where you have the muses come in the Disney movie, and you have the muses and they sing a little narrative thing to tell you what's going on. We kind of did that with the voices of these kids. And then by kids, I mean high schoolers. And then we had some scenes in second person, some in first person, and some in third person. And I have seen that done well in some books, but this one did not know how to manage it effectively. And it just felt confusing and disorienting, and not in a good way. Because I do think good horror should be a little confusing and a little disorienting, or can be confusing and disorienting and work. This did not work in the way that it was done. It was just kind of disappointing. It was really disappointing. And I've done full videos on both of these as well. So these are 1.5s. I have 2 1.5s this year. Sunbringer, which was the sequel to Godkiller. It was a sequel to Godkiller, and I knew I probably wasn't going to like it. And I tried to give it the benefit of the doubt and be are you gonna improve on Godkiller? Are you gonna take this and go somewhere? And it was the characters. It was still the characters for me. I couldn't get over how much I disliked them. They were just not fun to be around. I really didn't like them. It was so depressing because I was I really should like these people, and I couldn't like them. I still think the story is a good idea. I still think the way that she's built the world is nice, but it's just the thought behind the way that she's built the world is nice, but I think the world itself falls really flat. Fathom Folk, I also did a longer video too, and this is another one that I was really excited about. I read an advanced reader copy of this, and I was really looking forward to it. It sounded really great. It was to do with classism and separation along these lines of racial boundaries within a city, and it was very deliberately shown with the striation of people who lived above the waterline and people who lived below the waterline, and we had mythical creatures. It was inspired by a lot of Asian folklore, and the cover is, again, a stunning cover. And I think it's Jess Owens, I've heard say a whole bunch of beautiful gowns, and this one is the epitome to me of a beautiful gown. It frustrated me to no end. I read this in January, and I'm still upset about parts of it because it really should have been good. Book 2 has been announced. I may pick it up this year to see if some of those things were improved. And I really think this is exemplary of the fact that developmental editing is failing right now. I don't blame the authors for this. I really think that the publishing industry is failing authors, especially debut authors, because this is, again, a debut author, on their developmental editing. Okay, so these 2 are definitely in my worst 2 books of the year. So I'm going to save my worst one for last, and I'm going to give you my second to worst book. And it's going to upset people too, I think. Lady Macbeth by Ava Reid. This author, she's just not for me. I really want her to be for me, but I can't. I struggle so much with the way that she writes what she calls her feminist literature. I really struggle with it. This one was definitely one that I struggled with. I like the play Macbeth a lot, and Lady Macbeth in the play is actually a very strong female character. She's the villain, but she's a strong female character. She's not villainized because she's a woman. She's villainized for her desire for power. And so are the men in the book who have a desire for power in the play. But she's not villainized for being a woman, like Ava Reid did to her Lady Macbeth, which is not the Lady Macbeth. That's actually the Lady Macbeth. This is what if Macbeth had his wife chained in the basement and he went and got himself a young 18-year-old bride. Let's suddenly make someone a dragon shifter. That'll be good. If you read Macbeth and you thought, oh, cool story, bro, but it needs more dragons, you might like this. Like, it is that millennial coded t-shirt, like from when I was in high school. That is what this book is. But my worst book of the year is still one I read in January because I'm still mad when I think about it, especially given everything right now. This is Domesticating Dragons, which is the first book in a series called Reptilian Corp. This is by Dan Kobold, and yes, I read it because his name is very similar to Kobold, which is a small dragon in D&D, like a anthropomorphic dragon. And I was like, what? A guy named Kobold wrote a book about domesticating dragons? Like, hell yeah, let's listen to it. It's free on Audible. I'll listen to it. I'm so mad that I did. He pitched it because he wrote his blurb because he has them on his website and stuff, and he was an indie author. And I was like, yeah, I need to read more indie books. Like, let's go with this one. He's a scientist. I was like, okay, he's a scientist writing sci-fi. That'll be cool. And it was pitched as Jurassic Park meets Build-A-Bear. And I was like, that sounds fun. That sounds like silly and cozy, and I'm here for it. Like, I love a silly, cozy time. And so I have a long video about this one too. Like, I have a long video about how much I hated this book. But essentially, this is like a toxic masculinity Elon bootlicking book. And no, never again. Like, never again will I be fooled by an indie writer being like, I'm a scientist, I write sci-fi. Like, I feel jaded. Like, I have been stabbed in the back by trying to support fellow scientists who want to write. And I got a major letdown by this. I'm so upset. It's so ridiculous. I shouldn't be this upset, but I am. So let me know what your worst books of the year were, and if you have any in common with me. If you liked some of the ones that I hated, feel free to tell me that I'm wrong, because I want to know why I'm wrong. I would love to hear it. If you want to stick around, I'll be doing more of this end of the year content in the next week or so, and I'll see you then.